Hello and welcome to another video from the greatest channel on YouTube, and it is my Week 17 Premier League review of the weekend's games, and it's the first time I've done this in probably about a month. I have missed out 3 weeks, typical of my channel really, and myself, just completely missing out a load of weeks. I've just been bogged down in loads of coursework. It usually gets more intense around the Christmas period, and then obviously the following months after, and you get a bit of relaxation, and then it goes straight back into the exam preparation period. But luckily I have some time over Christmas, so I might as well go back to doing these and talking about the Premier League. Also, I'm thinking that I'm finally going to be able to start a PES career mode, or sorry, Master League, because they've actually updated the squads now. I couldn't be bothered to do it myself. Well, I could. Well, actually, no, I couldn't. It was tempting, but I tried to do it, and then something cocked up, and then I just couldn't be bothered again, and waited until they're updated, and now they're finally updated. So anyway, we'll move on to all the games from this weekend. No 12:45 game here, so we'll just dive straight into the 3 o'clock games, and we'll start off with Manchester United versus Norwich. And really, this game summed up all the problems that United have had in the last maybe 2 years, pretty much ever since Van Gaal came in. But there's 3 main problems. I may have mentioned this on my channel before, but there's 3 main problems with United, and they've been there for a while, and they are Rooney, Van Gaal and Woodward. Woodward mainly for his transfer policy, Van Gaal mainly for obviously him being involved in the transfers, and also obviously the system or philosophy that he likes to play, and then obviously Rooney for just being a complete and utter waste of space. And they all sort of link in quite well, because in 2013 we could have got rid of Wayne Rooney. Obviously Moyes was in charge then. We could have got rid of Rooney, and we could have had more money, and then we would have been able to spend it on more than Marouane Fellaini. Which I think greatly would have helped us, considering we went into that season with a squad that maybe wasn't as focused, and I think a few signings could have lifted sort of the competition and the mood, and maybe got us on our way a bit more, although Moyes probably would have dragged us down quite a bit at the same time still. But really, you just look at what happened in this game. Rooney gave the ball away horrendously for the second Norwich goal. Carrick was also involved in that. Carrick has been a bit hit and miss this season, but Rooney pretty much involved in giving the ball away. Phil Jones is nowhere, and that pretty much kills 2 birds with 1 stone. If we'd had maybe a better defender there, also Ashley Young at right back, not tracking back quick enough, he wasn't even sprinting. If we had a bit better defence, if we had more backup, then you know, we would have defended that a lot better, and Tete probably wouldn't have scored his rather lucky goal. But Rooney gave the ball away, and again, I just don't see why he got back into the squad for this game, because he hasn't done anything this season which shows he should have been in the squad, and he's only just come back from injury. So I don't see how he's really going to work out as our main outlet going forward, along with Mata, who has been shafted onto the right hand side for no reason really, other than to fit Van Gaal's system, which is the exact reason why he pretty much left Chelsea, because he wanted to have more sort of freedom to do his work, and he hasn't really had that. So whatever happens, I wouldn't be surprised if Mata leaves us in the summer, no matter who's in charge, unless of course it's anyone other than Van Gaal or Mourinho. But first goal was very poor defensively as well. De Gea actually had a part in that as well. He tried to tried to make the save look better than it really needed to be, and he paid the price for that and let Cameron Jerome of all people score, which shows how poor it was really. But as I was alluding to, the 3 main problems are Van Gaal's system, which relies on a strong defence, which doesn't really help when you have so many injuries, especially in the defence, and you have to make so many makeshift defences. And it's obviously had a major effect, because at the start of the season it worked, because we had a set defence, Smalling and Blind at centre back, and it was working out nicely. Now, not so much, with so much chopping and changing, and having to play people like Varela at right back, although he's done not too bad a job. But having to play Young at left back, right back, wherever, might as well play at centre back. And really, we got one back. Martial pretty much, again, proving to be our only bright light. Depay feels like he could get there at some point, but it's certainly not going to be now, and we sort of need players to do it in the here and now, and Martial's really the only player that's doing that. It was a nice finish to get us back into the game, although it was really not going to do anything for us anyway, but it was a good finish in a tight area. He's very good in those tight areas, and I think we just have to try and develop Martial well if he wants to keep going forward, really. But patience is running out with Van Gaal. I'm not confident with the Stoke game or the Chelsea game now, really. And the problem is, even if we do lose those two games and bring someone else in, then it's probably going to be too late for in terms of our title challenge, unless the new manager that comes in provides a miracle, which we've seen with Mourinho before. But I'm not even sure if I would want Mourinho, to be honest. Maybe Giggs until the summer. I certainly wouldn't want Giggs as a long-term replacement, because I just don't think he's ready for it, especially in the climate that we're in at the moment. So we need a short-term fix and then a long-term solution. But I don't think Giggs is either of them. Well, he's certainly not the short-term fix, but we may have no other options. But anyway, I've gone on about Manchester United for way too long. Good result for Norwich there, though. They set up perfectly, to be frankly honest. Although it's pretty easy to set up perfectly against a side that pretty much goes out with the same game plan every single game. Everton versus Leicester then. Leicester continue to fly towards the Premier League crown with 2 penalties in this game, and I don't think either of them can really be disputed. Everton pretty much summing up their season so far was Lukaku scoring eventually. He does seem to miss a lot of chances before he scores, but he does seem to always find himself on the score sheet. But then horrendous errors at the back, no real leadership without Jagielka. Funes Mori and Stones are decent defenders on the ball, but sometimes there are lapses in concentration. I think Everton will only get better there, but it's not. Martinez and Everton are definitely underachieving at the moment, and this was a game they probably should have got something out of, even considering how well Leicester are doing at the moment. But really, once again, this game was dominated by Kante and Morgan in the defence, and defensive midfield for Leicester. And really, they are sort of the unsung heroes of the Leicester team, along with Schmeichel probably as well. But Vardy and Mahrez continuing to be a complete nuisance to the league. And Everton really do need to start getting on a run of form, but I don't see that coming too soon because they don't have favourable fixtures. Moving on to Chelsea versus Sunderland. A lot of people saying that Chelsea may have turned a corner here after Mourinho's gone. I completely disagree. I just think Sunderland were crap. We've seen this many times this season, where teams have beaten Sunderland and it really hasn't meant much. I mean, Sunderland, they beat Newcastle, they went on a bit of a run and then they've gone back to being pretty crap again, which isn't too surprising. Allardyce has got to pull a miracle out of his arse, really, and I can't see it happening. But really, it's the same things we've been seeing all season. Coates making several mistakes, allowing Chelsea to score, especially for the second goal, I think it was. And I mean, it was just summed up with one moment where I remember Oscar just ran through pretty much the whole defence and they just completely stood off him. It's truly ridiculous. Chelsea, I admit, did look better in this game, but they really haven't been tested yet without Mourinho, and Hiddink in charge could completely change everything. But at the moment, Costa Rica isn't offering them much, and really, Oscar is very in and out anyway, so he did have a good performance here, but I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up being incredibly poor in the next 2 games, because that seems to be the way that Oscar and pretty much Brazilians as a whole work, unless your name's Neymar. Moving on to Southampton versus Spurs, and really this was, I think, separated really by the strikers. Harry Kane was a fantastic run and finish to put Spurs 1-0 up, and then they scored not too late after. But Southampton in a bit of a dodgy run of form, and I think that's mainly just because they can't seem to find the net, and it's sort of causing problems defensively as well. Cedric hasn't been as solid as I thought he would be. Their centre-back partnership is still good, which is why obviously Southampton will be fine in terms of any relegation problems. But really, Pella's just going through one of those dry spells. He's the ultimate problem on fantasy football, really. Thank God I got him out, because he just goes on tears and then goes many weeks without doing anything. And he's sort of going through at the moment. And the problem is Mane isn't really contributing either. He had a few chances in this game, but he wasn't able to convert them. So there were a few mistakes from Southampton, at the same time, it really wouldn't surprise me if they went and beat Arsenal in the next game. They're that type of club this season, I think, although it's the type of league this season as well. Um, Anything else I've missed? Apart from that, Southampton are missing Schneidlin a bit as well, I think. There wasn't really anyone trying to, well, they just had that, they're pretty much dominated in midfield, but Spurs have done that to a lot of teams this season. And obviously Spurs really do need to win these types of games to get into the top four or challenge for the title. I think that might be a bit too ambitious, but I do think they have potential to challenge for the title. I mean, they've got a very, very solid defence which they can work off, and if Kane can hit the form that he was in last season, I don't think he's quite hit those heights yet, but I think if they had someone like Ozil in there, Eriksen hasn't really provided the goods too much this season. If Eriksen started to go for a bit of a purple patch like Ozil is, then there's definitely a chance for Spurs to push on if they obviously change their mentality of constantly cocking up like they did against Newcastle. Moving on to West Brom versus Bournemouth, and I have to admit I think I may have underestimated Bournemouth a bit here. Sunderland and Villa look like they're well and truly screwed, so my two predictions there were pretty good. But even though they've had so many injuries, including to their main striker, Bournemouth are still ploughing on and getting results, and they are starting to look a bit more like a Premier League side now, I think, as well. I think I remember at the start of the season, the game against Liverpool, they sort of threatened but didn't threaten. It sort of felt more like a cup game, and that's what a lot of the games felt like it was Bournemouth at the start of the season. But now I think they're starting to find their rhythm because of the recent performances that they've had, and adding to that, really, West Brom had a very off day for themselves. I mean, I don't know what the hell McLean was doing for that tackle. Shocking tackle to get sent off. I'm not even sure if it was a tackle. It was more like assault. I mean, it's just horrendous. And then Rondon, very, very stupid, because he's been their main source of goals this season, Rondon, for West Brom. And now he's going to be suspended for a bit, which isn't ideal considering how many games are coming up in this Christmas period. So it may be a bit of a depressing time for West Brom if they can't handle it defensively over Christmas. And if they can't handle it over Christmas defensively, and Pulis does get it a bit wrong, it wouldn't surprise me if they were into the relegation battle, considering the amount of points people are picking up from 18th above at the moment. So West Brom have to be careful and not have many more performances like this. But it's not exactly going to be easy with the amount of suspensions they'll have. But yeah, Bournemouth starting to look like they may have turned the corner a bit here, and out of the three teams I tipped for relegation, I'm starting to think Bournemouth might be the most likely to stay up if they can keep going in the vein that they are at the moment. Moving on to Stoke versus Crystal Palace then, and not really much to say here. Two most unpredictable teams in the league probably, along with Southampton, and really it was a definite penalty. I put Stonewall penalty here, but I can't actually remember who it was to. Crystal Palace, I think. Yes, it was to win the game for Palace. That's just, it's sort of one of those ones where you sort of look at it and you can't really remember anything that happened, even though it was probably quite a good game to watch. Actually, no, it probably wasn't. Actually, no, it was not the winning goal, because that was Lee Chung-Young. Now it's coming back to me. Lee Chung-Young was a fantastic finish to win it for Crystal Palace. Sorry, I am all over the place, but this is what happens when you have Stoke and Crystal Palace. They just completely muddle your mind. But Stoke really, they're so inconsistent. Let's just leave it there. I'm not even going to talk about these two teams anymore. Moving on to Newcastle versus Villa, two more infinitely interesting teams, because they're slightly, well, when I say slightly worse than Stoke and Palace, they're a hell of a lot worse. And really, Newcastle should have won this game, but they didn't, which really sums up Newcastle and McLaren as well. I still think McLaren's going to be sacked relatively soon, even if they do stay up. Which looks like they probably will do this season, just because there's, again, teams that are slightly worse than them. But really, it was dreadful marking for the Newcastle goal from Villa. I mean, how the hell can you miss Colaccini and not mark him? And more importantly, let Colaccini get away from you. I mean, it's not exactly like he's the most deadly player in the box. And then De Jong obviously missing a pretty much a sitter there from about 2 yards out was a header. Pretty much just sums up Luke De Jong's, CM De Jong's time at Newcastle. And then Ayew with a fantastic curling effort to sort of reminiscent of Walcott's goal actually, if I remember correctly. It was a very nice goal, and he's starting to maybe take the mantle from his brother a bit. I think that's now, I can't remember if it was 4 or 6 goals that I think it's 6 goals that Ayew's had this season, so but I think that might actually be the same as his brother, I believe as well. So he's sort of caught up in that area, maybe proving that he is a better brother. But I really do think attack could be the best form of defence for Villa, because if you're going to try and defend and not try and hit teams on the counter and try and sort of contain teams, I really don't think it's going to work for Villa, because you look at their defence: Hutton, Richardson, Lescott, and someone else who I'm forgetting, who's just completely gone out of my mind because he's probably so poor. Richards, there we go. It's not exactly a strong defence. A lot of old guys in there, which you could say could help with experience, but it really isn't at the moment. They are reminding me of Fulham a lot a couple of seasons ago, so I think they have to just attack, because it may be their best form of defence, and they've got a few decent options going forward, just Grealish and Ayew now as well, starting to hit a bit of form. So, I mean, was how unpredictable the Premier League's been this season. Why not just go for it? Moving on to the Sunday games, which was kicked by Watford versus Liverpool. Fantastic game here. Watford hammering Liverpool 3-0. Started by a mistake in the 3rd minute by Bogdan, dropping the ball straight into the path of Nathan Ake, who just about tucked it in, and then Agallo managed to get 2 after that. Not really much to say here other than Liverpool were crap and Watford were good. I mean, there isn't really much more to it. And I said at the start of the season that Watford would do well, and that's exactly what they've done. And Klopp, you can't really judge him at the moment because he's been left with such a poor side. So Liverpool won't get in the top 4 this season, that's for sure. I'd be amazed if they did. Moving on to Swansea versus West Ham, and this wasn't a particularly inspiring game. It had 0-0 written all over it and ended 0-0. I'm not quite sure why I actually watched it. It was a big mistake. I was hoping that something might happen, but nothing really did. And really, I think on a different day was a bit more confidence for Swansea if they were going for a bit of a better patch. And they actually had a coach, they might have won this game because they were having the majority of possession and chances, but really Gomes just isn't quite doing it for them at the moment, and the amount of times he's offside, it's not really too surprising. I do think they do need to bring in a striker again, because they do seem to recycle strikers a lot, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and Gomes isn't doing it at the moment. Equally though, Gomes is the service to him isn't too great either, really, at the moment. So they need to sort that out. But they'll still be fine, I think. But West Ham, really, I think they'll be happy with a point out of this game, because when you have Jelavic up front, you're really not aiming for much. And they really didn't have much attacking intent in this game, so they did well to get a point. Moving on to the big game that happened yesterday, which was Arsenal versus Manchester City, and Arsenal taking all the 3 points to really hone in on their title bid, but it's definitely not a title-deciding victory, I don't think. Even though Manchester City have shown their weaknesses. I think the one thing that's positive for Arsenal here is the fact that that they've proven that now they can beat the sides that are around them. They've beaten Leicester, they've beaten United, they've beaten City. Obviously they lost to Chelsea, but that's just typical of Arsenal. And I can't remember if they beat. Oh no, they drew with Liverpool. So really, when you look at the history of Arsenal title bids, they've sort of fallen apart on games that they've played against the sort of the teams that are around them and in the top 4. That seems to be changing this season just because of how weak the other teams are, and I think it just sort of show how the lack of quality is in the Premier League now, because I don't think Arsenal have actually improved that much apart from Cech and Ozil, and obviously Ozil's just going for a brilliant run of form, and Cech obviously has helped Arsenal out immensely. Otherwise I think they'll probably be in the same position that United or Spurs are in at the moment, and the Wenger out chance will still be going around. But I think that's the one change that Arsenal have had, although equally wouldn't surprise me if we had a very similar situation to 2013 where United hired Mourinho, then Mourinho screws Arsenal over after someone slips over. Manchester City somehow ghost into first place again and seal it, and all the Arsenal fans' hopes are shattered. But that's just my thoughts on what might happen. It wouldn't surprise me. Man City, I still think will win the league, even though they seem to be intent on throwing it away. Either that or Pellegrini gets sacked, although that seems pretty obvious. That probably was the most obvious point in the world. But anyway, I'll end it on that point. So thank you for watching, guys, and until next time, goodbye.